Okay, slideshow from current. So a lot of this, you won't have any issues with. The bad thing on this syllabus is the PADI stuff. So question 3, developing collaboration, working with stakeholders. So here we go. How the supply chains evolved. And I think, did you sit this, Carly, on this exam? And it put the evolution model into the exam question. So that was actually asked, was that first bullet, and we'll look at what that is. PADI, which is this awful framework from Gatona. It's been asked twice, so hopefully it won't come up again. Creating collaboration, shared services, and data integration. So, okay. So supply chain has evolved from traditional to more new ways, pretty standard terminology, easy to learn, key differences. The study guide shows this new model, and this is the one they asked about in July, and it's 5 stages, 6 stages even. The further you go to the right, more cross-functional collaboration. That's not a good diagram, but the Van Veel book has a better one, and it tells you what each stage is. And can you see it's very functional focused to the left and more cross-functional to the right. And if you look at their better diagram from the same guy, Veal, transactional, serve the factory, right through to proper integrated value chain. And you've got these words: centre-led, decentralised, functional, cross-functional. And then we've got the actual explanation of each stage. Now, they've examined this. It's named in the study guide, and it talks about evolution from transactional to collaborative. And that was the detailed question in the July exam, this model, and applying it to a situation. So learn the model, it's quite easy. I think it can also be how developed your supply chain is as well. It might not have evolved right to the end there. You might be somewhere in the middle. You might be to the left. So just make sure you're clear on that model. It isn't too bad, is it? It's just to learn, I'm afraid. Quite common sense, gives you some good examples, and there's a clear explanation of each stage. So that's quite learnable, even at this stage. You can be integrated with information, resources, or relationships. Traditional adversarial obviously has got problems with it, so you need to be more collaborative, sharing information, sharing data, developing products. Why do we need collaboration? Why do we need supply chain management? Fairly sort of generic list of drivers. What sort of relationship should we have? Well, this is a more sophisticated version of Cox's matrix, whether you're dominant or whether they're dominant. So you can be quite adversarial if you've got the power and your arm's length working, but often supplier and buyer are interdependent. So there is this balance to be struck. Collaborative planning can be on products, manufacturing, logistics, customers. PANIFAR, which is quoted in the study guide, says collaborative practices include those. So make sure you do know a little bit about each of those: CPFR, VMI, and ECR. So if you have to discuss practices, PANIFAR gives us those. What drives development, context, strategy, systems? Yeah, most companies can do better. Right, the study guide shows this diagram there. 4 key forces that determine supply chain success. It's from my friend Gatona, and that's what the study guide says is important. It's very badly explained because Gatona actually explains it vertically like that, because all them elements have got to be dynamically aligned. The study guide simply cites these as key forces and misses the alignment concept. So in his PADI framework, basically you've got to segment the customer, understand what they want, and make sure everything else lines up to deliver it. It's got to be aligned. So your leadership and capabilities have got to match your strategy, which should match the segmenting the customer. So it is a useful model, but it's badly explained in the study guide. It's more that relationship there, which is that marketplace, strategy, culture, leadership. But the study guide shows it as that. But that's dynamic alignment as opposed to alignment in 1.4, which is just strategic alignment. But I think this model would do for alignment as well as the 7S's. It's an easy model. The hard model is how to segment your customers. Gatorna came up with a PADI framework, and you can see there's a P, an A, a D, and an I. And he said you need to understand the behaviour or behavioural forces or logics in your supply chain. And depending what segment you've got to line your chain up. So we've got this thinking, intuition, feeling, sensing rubbish, because it's based on theory like Myers-Briggs and Jung, I think, who developed the behavioural attitudes. But I don't accept that companies have behaviours. But anyway, PADI is PADI. So what are the 4 customer logics? Well, understand me, surprise me, respond, or be consistent. And can you see they've got the P, A, D, and I there? It's linked, or it's based on Myers-Briggs theory, if you like. But what does that mean in effect? Well, it means we might have to be collaborative, we might have to be efficient, we might have to be dynamic, we might have to provide innovative solutions. So these are the 4 dominant buying behaviours, which is awfully confusing when you've just seen them 4 logics, which was understand me, surprise me, be consistent, respond. And now we've got collaboration, efficient, dynamic. And Gatorna in 2006 says these are the 4 dominant buying behaviours. So I think this slide is the de facto one, not that one, but both are in the study guide. And then to match your supply chain up, you then would have to have your strategy would lean supply, maybe agile supply, could be fully flexible, or it could be continuous replenishment. And that is essentially PADI. It's awful, but it links to this rotten diagram there, that you segment your marketplace segments with the 4 dominant buying behaviours. The strategy would be your lean, agile, etc. And your culture and leadership basically have to match up and support the strategy that you're putting in. I'm sure some of you have read this PADI stuff. Would anyone like to comment on it, other than whether you agree with me it's a load of tosh? But any comments on that? It's awful, isn't it?
Long-winded, Dave.
Yeah, conceptually it's not good, is it? But the only good thing, it has been asked twice in a row. So you would expect it wouldn't come up for a few exams. But it's named there, you can't go in with a blank sheet.
Was it asked on the last one or the 2 before?
The 2 before, Carly. The last one, they asked the development model from Veal. So they've asked 3 times in a row 2.1. So betting person 2.1 you would think is a non-starter if you were betting, because they've asked that section of the syllabus 3 times in a row, but they've asked the top bullet point and the last one and the second bullet point, the 2 exams in a row before that. Does that make sense? So hopefully not. So we need collaborative relationships. Well, in the study guide, Whipple and Russell say to have collaboration, you need them 5 things. That's fine, and that could be part of an answer anywhere on this syllabus. Have mutual objectives, etc. Share information. And Whipple and Russell say there are 3 types of collaboration: quite transactional, through to collaborative event management, through to almost in bed with them, collaborative process management, more knowledge sharing, more joint decision making. It's almost same as the model of Veal, but a bit simpler, just 3 levels of collaboration. Again, that's Whipple and Russell, which I think are on my theory notes. I don't know if you found them useful, that where I put some theory at the side of the bullets. Shared services is a name bullet point, which most of you understand, shared services. But when you're considering collaboration, shared services is generally a function within your own organisation. You set another business up separate in your organisation to run the shared service. And you get the benefits of like outsourcing. You get experts and you get better service. It's run more business-like. But you could just simply outsource it. Or you could centralise it at head office. You've got them sort of 3 options. The study guide mentions 3 models from Squealer, and they're actually wrong. If you read the paper, it's about some research that was done, not 3 methods of shared services. It was 3 methods to conduct research. But anyway, they talk about a cradle to grave, specialised and hybrid. It makes no sense, but it's there. So don't let me put you off that. Shared services, I think this is a Deloitte saying, trying to explain to you the difference between shared services and centralisation. There is a difference, and I'm sure most of you've got shared services in your companies and could articulate the difference. It's a subtle difference, but it is different. Who would benefit from shared services? Well, if there's only one company, you probably wouldn't benefit at all. One site, why would you have shared services? There's nothing to share with anyone. So you've got to be a big company with many sites, probably. Maybe too much local admin, non-standard procedures. So some reasons why you'd want shared services. Benefits of shared services. They're benefits of outsourcing, aren't they? We're trying to get rid of the bullwhip effect. Oh, that's put it in. Oh no, it's in section 4, isn't it, Claire? So I'm going to come back to bullwhip, but by collaborating, we can hopefully get rid of the bullwhip effect, which multiplies and amplifies demand and causes oscillations and problems as you go further down the supply chain. I'll explain that in a minute, so bear with me on bullwhip. Why do we need data integration? Data integration, you've all done that on your last exam anyway. Tools for integrating, ESB, SOA, iPass, APIs. What are the problems of integrating data, recording it, field data, the systems, one version of the truth? That was pretty much 3.1. And then we've got the change management stuff, communicating what we're going to do with stakeholders, and then bringing in a change agent to manage the change. We can use RACI charts to communicate and make sure everyone knows what they're doing. Effective communication, according to Hodges, is about them things. Change management, yeah. Communication strategy, we might have one. What would the plan look like? Pretty much that. Who says so? PM Bock. There's a typical one. Who's the stakeholder? What's the power interest? How are we going to communicate? How often? When? What's the message? Gauging resources for change. The change agent is new to this syllabus. We've done change management, but change agent is a specific person who could be the new chairman, or it could be someone brought in to do the change. There are many benefits of bringing someone in. But what roles do they fulfill? Well, there's this very strange guardian, seer, translator, cultivator, catalyst, navigator, teacher. They have to fulfill maybe all them roles. Who says so, garden? What skills do they need? Sensitive to change, team building, communication skills, negotiation skills, managing up skills. How do we gauge acceptance? Well, they've adapted the Kirkpatrick model of training, which had 4 levels, but this is 3. What's the reaction? What's the learning? And what's their behaviour? And you can assess the effectiveness of the change by looking at them 3 areas. And we'll look at that in more detail in a minute, Kirkpatrick's model. You did it on L5M1, if you've forgotten. How do we know if people are ready for the change? Interviews, mapping, observation, group reviews, tools, pretty obvious. That was 3.2. Change management. It's okay, I think I want to check something there. KPIs, surveys, balance scorecards. Licenses, there are 4 classifications of measurements: accounting, comparative, audits, and miscellaneous. Measures should be inclusive, universal, measurable, and consistent. I'm sure you learnt features of good KPIs for your L5, M4s. You could mention SMART, SLAC from your operations management, 5 objectives: cost, quality, speed, etc. General measures of performance. Could use balance scorecard. Now it's in the July exam. There's the SLAC ones again, sorry, quality, speed, etc. It's a very strange slide. How do we design a survey to collect data? Well, this is what you teach students at university, but there's a 6-step method there for designing a survey. I'm not quite sure that's what's got to do with procurement. And we've got the balance scorecard again, red, amber, green. There's the 4 areas. Performance measures should be HOPE, who says so, SPARE. They should be harmonised, optimal, parsimonious, and economical. Wow. 3.4, right. This was the one, for some reason, Claire been through the slides. I'd done the knowledge management fairly detailed, but I'd not done the other 3 bullets. So if this comes up, what's it about? How can we develop knowledge and skills to ensure we've got effective supply chain management? Well, we can do stuff in-house, the staff we've got, and we can do things along the chain and through the chain. The study guide talks about a VUCA world. Volatility, uncertainty, ambiguity, and complexity. So we've got this VUCA world, which means we've got to move quickly, share knowledge, develop new processes. You know, change is constant, it's fast, it's uncertain, it's a mess. So VUCA can be low volatile, high uncertainty, yeah. So if you haven't come across VUCA, there you go. It's in the study guide right at the start of 3.4. Knowledge management, the knowledge pyramid, which we did on L5M4. Data's just numbers. They need to be changed to information, and then from information we can develop knowledge. And the steps of knowledge management on the left: collect, organise, summarise, analyse, synthesise, decision make. Learn 1 definition, I think there's 3 in my notes, of knowledge management. ISO 2000, is it Dan or is it Ryan? One of you is a quality bod, aren't you? But ISO 9001.
Ryan.
It's Ryan, is it? Yeah, I saw your fancy title the other day. I was very impressed. And I must admit, it had gone past me, organisation knowledge in 9001. But it talks about determine the knowledge you need, maintain the knowledge, and consider your current knowledge and determine how you'll gain updated or additional knowledge. It is in relation to quality systems. It isn't a knowledge management standard, but it does recognise organisational knowledge is important. And it talks about capturing knowledge through checklists, training packages, on-the-job training, knowledge database, and work instructions. Right. The most important model for your study guide is the Nanuka and Taguchi, whatever it's called, model of capturing knowledge. There are 4 methods: socialization, externalization, internalization, and combination. You do need to learn them 4 things. And knowledge can go from tacit to explicit, and it can go from explicit to tacit. Can you see there's a little spiral in there, so you go round and round this. So familiarise yourself with the SECI model. Not for 25 marks, only a short paragraph. How do we facilitate knowledge management? Promotion, culture of openness, deliberate design, rewards, social learning, lessons learned, trusting culture, sharing, talking, meetings, you name it. Developing competencies. Well, recruit the right people, create proper job descriptions, person specifications, identify competency gaps, develop training. SIPs, the study guide talks at great length about the 6 competency framework, which has 4 pillars and 11 themes, and it can help you develop job descriptions. It can be used in recruitment. So if you go and do a skills assessment on the SIP site, you can do a like PDP plan and see if you need to upskill or what you're short of. So the SIPs competence framework's worth mentioning. 5 levels, tactical through to advanced professional. Competency frameworks are all the rage in HR. So jargon-wise, make sure you can chop that off. We need different skills, different parts of the cycle. I'm not going to, you could work out what skills are needed where, especially say negotiation. The training needs analysis cycles important, where we're trying to find gaps, identify the needs, plan the training, do the training, evaluate the training, review it. So TNA, familiarise yourself, it's easy. CIPD suggests the RAM approach. It's based on the need for relevance, how existing or planned learning will meet the new opportunities and challenges for the business. Alignment, whether the strategy takes an integrated view, and measurement. So that's cited in the study guide, the RAM approach. My favourite though still is Kirkpatrick, who we mentioned earlier, and it's the just traditional way of assessing if you've done some training, was it any good? So level 1 is, how did you feel? You fill in a form at the end of the training and tick and smiley faces. Then level 2 is, have you improved your skills and knowledge and changed attitudes as a result of the training, which may be a week or 2 afterwards? Behaviour, have they changed behaviours as a result? What benefits has the company got? Much harder to measure and gauge. The top one, results. So Kirkpatrick's 4 levels. Return on training investment can improve sales performance, can improve productivity, and it suggests some measures there which are fairly common sense. Revenue renewal rates, customer retention rates, straight from the study guide. Whoops. And that's chapter 3. Let me share the screen again in a second. So my big tip is to look at my revised notes on 3.4 and just make sure you're familiar with the old HR competencies, training needs analysis, RAM approach, Kirkpatrick and that stuff. It's quite easy to learn. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to share this new one any second, I hope. You okay with that section 3 then? So 4 is a bit of a rambling section. There's 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4 and 4.5. But remember, strategic fit has not been examined, and it's, can you see the last 2 bullet points of strategic fit? In fact, strategic fit, the synonym or whatever it's called for it, is strategic alignment, but yet the SIP study guide in 1.4 has got alignment up there and it's got fit in 4.4, and yet it's the same concept, but different theories if it's question 4. Right. How do we ensure value-added outcomes, stakeholders, matching supply? So what's value added? Benefits over cost should be greater than 1. Value is function divided by cost, or worth divided by cost, or value of all benefits divided by the sum of costs. And the study guide calls this the cost effectiveness ratio. And there I've defined what function is. So we can improve value by improving functionality or reducing cost, or both. So added value isn't just about reducing costs. Productivity there is defined at the bottom. Make sure you can define productivity. Value-added strategies, the study guide suggests, is about people, technology, and processes. Supply chain and corporate performance. Customer value, the marketing mix, hopefully gives customers value if you get the 4 Ps right. That's how you create customer value, by making sure that you've got the marketing mix right. We can improve shareholder value if we're doing supply chain management correctly. And we need to manage demand fulfillment. So shareholder value isn't just about making profits, but it's about increasing the share price. It is about revenue growth, dividends, etc. So it's shareholder value is a concept that's important. We need to report data timely, because then we can make decisions, we can benchmark, we can solve problems, we can respond, we can control. Pretty obviously why we need to report data, because hopefully it gives us them benefits. But we might have the wrong system, we might use the wrong metrics. The data might not lack integrity, and we might need different reports or different levels of management, which can be problematic. Let me just check that's still recording. I'm sure it is. Yeah. So data can be behavioural, transactional, ambient. So there's many different types of data. It can be structured, unstructured. Not in the study guide, a simple way of looking at characteristics of good data: accuracy, validity, reliability, timeless, relevance. I've got a different one in my notes, which is a longer version, so I'll put both in. I'll put this smaller one, and I've got one that's got a mnemonic so you can remember it, which is in my study notes. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's quite an easy one to remember. But that's always useful. Benefits of data analytics and data. I'm sure from your L6m3 you could articulate benefits of data and data analytics. The problem is, how do we match demand and supply? If we can supply exactly what's demanded, we've no problems. But if we've got volatility and complexity, it can cause issues. So we need product lifecycle planning, SOP planning, quarterly objectives and reviews maybe. Who says so, the study guide. SOP planning, depending what system and what book you read, you need to forecast, demand, plan, pre-op meeting, executive meeting, sign off, finalise, implement, SOP. The study guide shows the input-output model for some reason, but it's trying to help us think about how we measure what's happening in the supply chain. And we've got their throughput rate is flow of units over units of time, which is not rocket science. So you might be making 5 cars per day, 5 cars per hour. We might need reactive capacity to cope with demand volatility. But the best way is to get rid of the bullwhip effect. How happy are we with bullwhip? I can explain this in a couple of minutes, hopefully. I know we've covered it before. So we've got everything in balance down the supply chain, 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, right through to the third tier. Nobody's talking to each other. And what happens, I'll only go through one set of numbers. The demand for the OEM, they only sell 95 cars. So because they always keep 100 in stock, they think the customer's now only going to buy 95 a month. So they reduce production to 90. So at the end of the month, they've got 95 in stock. So if we go to the first level supplier, they only get an order for 90. But because they've got 100 in stock, they only produce 80. And we go back to the second tier, who gets an order for 80 and produces 60. And we go back to the third tier, they get an order for 60 and only produce 20. And if I put all the figures in, you can see the OEM by period 3 is exactly in line, 95, 95. But we look at the poor third level supplier, it takes them till period 6 to catch up, and look at their demand. Production, 120, 180, 60, their demand's all over the place. Because of this oscillation, the ripple goes down. Is that okay, that one?
Yep.
Sort of okay. It's from the Slack textbook, but I think it's a good example of explaining this ripple. And to stop that, you need to share information, collaborate, not have silly promotions and not do daft things that cause demand to surge. Okay, we'll get rid of bullwhips. I'll throw bullwhip in. And that's just a diagram showing a graph for the effect where it's amplified right back at the supplier. So a small blip up front leads to a big blip further back. So supply chains need to be managed in different ways. Then metrics are in the study guide: throughput rate, WIP, Little's law, inventory turns, per unit inventory cost. So they're measures that are thrown in one of the pages, and I thought, well, it's about measurements, it's about supply chains. So possibly worth knowing. The study guide talks about having reactive supply chains, and the quote Hop et al. And it talks about, and it isn't actually reactive supply chain management, it's reactive risk management when you look at the paper. So we've got a problem, what do? We recognise it, initiate some action, create the team, develop the plan, revise the plan, learn. So that's reactive. Proactive, though, in the same paper talks about initiation, identifying the risk, risk assessment, mitigation, implement, educate, monitor, test. So hopefully when something happens, we've got plans in place, contingency plans, rather than just reacting. So it can be reactive or proactive. And that's the diagram, not in the study guide, that shows how you might mitigate supply chain risk through collaboration, hedging, postponement, buffering, agility, avoiding the risk, creating a supply chain risk management culture. Rather like that. So that's a really useful slide, I thought, if I was going to want some stuff to waffle about. KPIs, integration, benchmarking, balance scorecards, yawn, you've done it a million times. So there's the 4 balance scorecard measures, red, amber, green. KPIs, not for you though, for the supply chain. So we need different supply chain measures: perfect order, fill rate, cash to cycle, inventory days, customer order cycle time. So there's 5. So make sure you know them. Order fill rate, cash to cash, and customer order cycle. I've detailed 3 there of the 5. Worth learning. EDI can help. We can have systems integrated lightly or tightly. We can use SOA, and we can use things like Microsoft BizTalk, MuleSoft, I've never heard of, you might have, and Tibco, BusinessWorks, never heard of it. So there are various systems integration for enterprises. ERP, includes all them things. Same sort of diagram. ERP is flexible, modular, beyond the company. Web integrated ERP is collaborative commerce, sharing information. ERP, again, which you've done many, many times. Benefits of ERP. Barcodes can be used to communicate. RFID. Yeah, the study guides shows this. I think again it's PANIFAR, I think, but I'll have to check on my sheet. It says there are 4 supply chain integration strategies: MRP, DRP, JIT, which is fine, and DPP. Well, DPP is a method in a supply chain for finding the true cost of stocking and selling a product. So rather than just look at, we buy it at £6 and sell it at 7, so we make £1, you try to identify the true cost of it through all the movement, storage, and etc. of it. So it's big in retail and logistics, is this concept of DPP. Performance measurement, SEALer highlights failure is dependent upon support characteristics, purposeful measurement, and it must be widely accepted. There's a million of these lists, I'm afraid. Measurement and safety. Well, the study guide goes down safety under technological, reputational, financial, and physical. What they really mean is risk, but they've called it safety in the study guide and the syllabus, that safety can be jeopardized through reputation, technology, finance, and physical. Benchmarking, there's actually a couple more models in this study guide. There's 6 as opposed to the normal 4. Quite easy. Problems with benchmarking. And at level 6, it's no good just saying there's this method, that method, and writing half a page on each. You've got to be able to articulate limitations, benefits, etc. So problems, we might use the balanced scorecard, the OM. Right, it's getting a bit more technical now. How many plants do we have? How many suppliers? How do we optimize the network? How do we do risk management? And how do we do CPFR and BPR? How do we decide where to locate? Well, Yang and Lee suggest all them factors impact on where to locate, which is that list there. Very common sense, to be honest. Costs, environment, wage rates, very obvious stuff. But if you can quote Yang and Lee, remember a few of them. They suggest in the study guide that we might rank location factors. Some's pivotal, some are vital, some things are important, some are secondary. And that's part of Yang and Lee's theory. Chopra and Mendel, which isn't in the study guide, suggests that's how you do it. You set your supply chain strategy, you look at your regional facility configuration, then you look at the desirable sites, and then you pick based on all them factors. But if you don't want that list, don't go there. Supply chains have various flows. How do we optimize them flows? We look at the options, we look at the option analysis, business case, sign off. And then we've got the word network optimization, which might use linear programming, center of gravity, minimum spanning, maximum flow. But you are not going to have to articulate them, but you might want to name them. And there's a bit more on them: linear programming, center of gravity, minimum spanning, maximum flow. Depends what you're trying to optimize. Is it inventory levels, customer service levels, or profits? We need to identify risk in supply chains, and they can come from them 5 areas, which is the, I think, Reckon Long theory, which I like. Risk management, we know what it is. And we've got the 4 T's. CPFR has 4 major Areas, strategic planning, matching supply and demand, monitoring, implementing, and BPR, slack, some new terms, short and fat, dramatic, control, radical thinking are the principles. I think my notes generally go down this one: rethink, strive, have, put. So BPR's named, and I've put a critique of BPR in there. And then we're on to the very, very, very new stuff that wasn't in any other study guide. Uncertainty, capabilities, fit, spectrums, frontiers, fit. So what is fit? Matching supply and demand. Competitive strategy and supply chain strategy need to be aligned so we understand the customer supply chain, understand the supply chain capabilities, and then try and achieve strategic fit. So from the other day, we looked at this diagram from Fisher and matching demand uncertainty with processes, supply chain uncertainty. We can have lean supply chains or agile or risk edging or responsive. So one way of matching up supply and demand is to pick the right supply chain strategy based on demand uncertainty versus supply uncertainty. Functional products, innovative products, that's the Fisher stuff. That's the diagram in the study guide, same one. There's a version of it, same again. Achieving fit, understand the customer, and understand implied demand uncertainty. We need to understand supply, what affects demand. Very common sense, quantity demanded, the response customers want, variety of products, service level required, price, etc. If we understand the customer, we can do target costing. We can make sure the product's at the right price and it's going to be demanded by doing research and going through this 10-step process. Right, so new to this syllabus then is this cost responsive frontier, which talks about productivity versus responsiveness. And the frontier is exactly what it sounds. There is a front and edge. So currently the supply chain is set up here, and if we want to be that responsive, we get fairly low productivity. If we can get away with low responsiveness, we can have high productivity, and we can be anywhere on the frontier. So there's a trade-off between how responsive we are and productivity. If we improve the supply chain by redesigning it, we can move the frontier out, so we can have more of everything. We could be same responsiveness, but very productive, etc., etc. So this is an important concept, cost responsive frontier. There's the responsive spectrum. Named in your syllabus. And then we get this zone of fit, where we need to match up the resilience required versus the uncertainty. And we need to be somewhere in this zone. It's not the good diagram there from the study guide. That's the one from Shopper and Mendrel, which actually makes more sense. You talk about how responsive the supply chain needs to be versus how certain the demand is. So guess what? If demand's very certain, you can have a lean, efficient supply chain. If demand is very uncertain and erratic, we need a very agile supply chain. And this is the zone of strategic fit, again named in your syllabus. How do we achieve it? All functions must support the strategy. There is no right strategy. One size doesn't fit all. And then we're back to the efficient versus responsive supply chain, the differences. Issues affecting fit, how many products and segments you've got, the life cycle of the products, and competitive changes. Fit, we need to make sure the structure's aligned. So we've got the 7S framework here, and we've got to make sure the systems, the style, the staff, the skills are all aligned. So this is strictly an alignment model, but in the study guide it comes under strategic fit. So talk about McKinsey's 7S in question 4. If you get how you achieve fit, you would talk about the zone of strategic fit, etc. And you would then go on to discuss the 7S's, which was developed by Waterman Peters, who worked at McKinsey. There's the 7S's. Some of them are hard, easy to see and understand. Some of them are soft. And they're interconnected and need to be aligned. And if you've got stuff that isn't aligned, obviously, you need to get it aligned. There's some matching up to the supply chain of the 7S's. Identify the areas not aligned, determine the best design, decide where changes make. Review. Some great videos on YouTube again. So 7S is worth learning. You could squeeze it into question 1 instead of that horrible SAM model, I think, if you had to. What affects uncertainty? Geographic factors, depth and breadth. Who says so? Oh,
Dave, sorry, is the 7S mentioned in the study guide? Because I can't see it.
yeah, it should be in section 4.
All right.
Yeah, it is in section 4. Honestly, I haven't got the study guide in front of me. Honestly, it's under 4. Should be in 4.4. Just have a look while we're talking, Lucy. Might not be explained as well, but is there? I'd have to drop out and go into the book.
Don't worry, I'll have a look. It's probably in there. I just haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's tucked away. I had it in the wrong place in my original notes. I think I'd put it in 1.4 and it should be in 4.4. So 7S, uncertainty. Then the last section is self-explanatory. So the question is, what are the challenges for achieving and maintaining fit? Well, you'd have to explain firstly what strategic fit was and do some theory from 4.4, but then the answer is product variety and shrinking life cycles, explain that. Globalization and uncertainty, explain that. Fragmentation in supply chains. You don't do it all yourself, you've outsourced your long complex supply chains. Technology, how it's changing, and the environment and sustainability all impact on having a fit between your strategy and what the customer wants. So other issues, many products, product life cycles, competition, firms selling different products, tailoring them, variety, product life cycles, competition, internet, supply chains, drivers of globalization. Right, oh yeah, there is an important theory coming up, sorry. Ogden talks about geographic breadth and depth and uncertainty. Sorry, I had a slide earlier that didn't have the explanation. You'd say that's the explanation of uncertainty from Ogden. So that's an important one. Fragmentation in supply chains, less vertically integrated. Ownership structures have made aligning and managing supply chains difficult. Fragmentation issues, challenges, sustainability, fraud, all problems, all risks in supply chains. Supply chain fragmentation. Supply chains are more complex. There's changing technology. Sustainability is a big issue. And the challenges are there. Balance between responsiveness and efficiency, good answer to an essay, and meeting the needs of your target customers. Decreasing product life cycles, demanding customers, fragmentation, globalization. So I've put a little paragraph under each one there. So what do we think to section 4 there?
Okay, I think.
Yeah, it isn't too bad for, is it?
No.
There's a little bit. There is a little bit of new stuff, and if I went back to a new share screen and back to the L6M1s.